So what comes to mind when you hear Buffalo, New York? Maybe it's the sports teams, the Sabres, the Bulls, the Bisons, the Bills, or perhaps even FC Buffalo, if you're a soccer nut like me. And of course, there's the Buffalo Wings. To be clear, there is a difference between chicken wings and buffalo wings. But Buffalo has so much more on offer. You got the Shays Performing Arts Center and the Buffalo Theater District. Shays Performing Arts Center comprises of 3 theaters: Shays Smith Theater, Shays 710 Theater, and of course Shays Buffalo Theater. You got ridiculously cool neighborhoods like Allentown, Elmwood Village, and more recently Silo City. Places where the wings are hot, the beer is cold, the liquor is strong, and the vibe is chill. Their moniker is not the city of good neighbors without good reason. Plus, there's loads of incredible history, some of which we'll discuss in this episode, but thanks to inventor Nikola Tesla, Buffalo was the first city to have electricity, giving it the nickname City of Light. Move over Paris. Listen, we go into more detail about some fantastic things to do in Buffalo and what makes buffalo wings different, so check out the blog post on Road Trip Ontario. The link is in the description. And hell, if wings ain't one of your things, they have a plethora of incredible brunch, lunch, and dinner spots, as well as some classic, top-notch breweries. Hey, welcome to another episode of Highway Highlights, a podcast that takes all the raw, unedited interviews and inspirational stories found all across the Rudderless Media YouTube channel. My name is Christopher Rudder, and I am a road trip, day trip, and all-around travel expert in this here travel space. In this episode, we'll discuss 3 incredible places only found in Buffalo, New York. The Colored Musicians Club. We'll explore its history, purpose, and the musicians' unions. The Buffalo AKG Art Museum. Founded in 1862, is one of the oldest public art museums in the United States. And the Frank Lloyd Wright's Martin House, which renowned architect Frank Lloyd Wright designed. It was built between 1902 and 1905 for the businessman Darwin D. Martin and his family. In a couple of weeks, we'll be heading into Black History Month celebrations, so I figure there's probably no better place to start than on Michigan Street. Otherwise known as African American Heritage Corridor, you'll find the Michigan Street Baptist Church, the Nash House Museum, the Black-owned WUFO radio station, and the Colored Musicians Club. The Michigan Street Baptist Church has witnessed numerous stories of bravery, determination, and selflessness. From freedom seekers making their way along the Underground Railroad to Canada, to activists laying the groundwork for the civil rights movement. In 1836, African American men founded the Second Baptist Society of Buffalo. In 1835, they bought land on Michigan Street with the help of Peyton Harris, a previously enslaved individual. The congregation built it and completed it in 1849. Reverend J. Nash led the Michigan Street Baptist Church for over 60 years, from 1892 to the early 1950s. He was known for his effective preaching and advocacy for African Americans, which helped the church grow in size and influence within the community and the nation. Continuing along the African American Heritage Corridor, you'll find the Nash House Museum. The house at 36 Nash Street is very special in the 20th century history of Buffalo's African American community. From 1925 until 1987, the residence was the homestead of the aforementioned Reverend J. Edward Nash Sr. and his family. Reverend Nash played an important role in establishing branches of the Urban League and the NAACP in Buffalo, and was the leader in the Western New York Baptist Association. Back along the African American Heritage Corridor, we find ourselves at the Colored Musicians Club, which has a very interesting history.
Well, it actually goes all the way back to the early 1900s, you know, with segregation and stuff, and more in particular, the fact that live music was entertainment. You didn't have TV back then.
Right.
Radio was, you know, and definitely no internet. So, you know, people would go to clubs, you know, nightclubs and things like that for music.
That was George Scott, the Events and Education Coordinator at the Colored Musicians Club. Back then, being a member of a union was crucial to performing in many clubs, particularly for black musicians.
So it wasn't until 1917 that the musicians here of color would finally have their own union, and it would be known as Local 533. And this is an interesting point about the 533. They knew what was a black union over a white union because black unions had 3 numbers, white locals had 2. So even if you called like out to LA or something, they would ask you what local. And if it was more than 2 numbers, as okay, I know what you are, you know.
From 1917 to about 1934, the Colored Musicians Club did not have a permanent home until they acquired their current location at 145 Broadway.
And from that point on, now they had not only a place for the union to meet and, you know, talk, but they also had a club upstairs. Because the other part of the coin was they would get to play these swank white clubs, but they weren't allowed to stay afterwards. You know, so let's say, you know, you're a top musician, you packed house, and now, you know, people want to give you drinks, meal, but they weren't allowed to do it, and you weren't allowed to stay. So that usually, up until we had the club, they just had to go somewhere else, home mostly. But now they had a spot to go to afterwards. And here, it was even a better reason because when these famous musicians got done, they came to that club, they would eat, have a drink, but more importantly, if they liked the music, they would join in on a jam session. And this was how a lot of our local musicians got heard and got to tour with many of these famous people. And then as time went by, many of them became famous in their own right.
Wow.
You know.
Dr. Raymond E. Jackson, the retired president of Local 533, said that musicians would use the club for band rehearsals on Sundays, taking advantage of the free space and the piano provided. Oh, and one more thing that was even more important about the union was its involvement in the community.
They did a lot for the community. They had set up a credit union. So really, for the first time, the people in the community had a bank because you couldn't go to a regular bank.
Right.
So we had that going.
So you had your own credit. Like,
Yeah.
Nice.
They set up an insurance with life benefits in there. So now they can have a decent burial, you know.
Nice.
On January 1st, 1969, Union Locals 43 and 533 merged to form the Buffalo Musicians Association, Local 92. However, this new merger exhibited favoritism towards the white musicians and resulted in African American musicians losing their jobs. Luckily, though, the Colored Musicians Club was fortunate enough to buy the property at 145 Broadway and stay independent from the Union Local. Whereas in some other cities, mergers resulted in African American locals losing their real estate and being overshadowed by the bigger, more dominant white locals. Look, we even get into the stories or mention some of the big names who performed in that club or some of the local bands that came out of that club. But it is something we may tackle over on the Road Trip Ready podcast. That said, jazz has always been one of my favorite types of music, where instruments don't just get along. If you listen closely, they are actually engaging in conversation. I do credit my old man for introducing me to jazz, blues, and soul as a child and allowing me to fully appreciate it. Although he probably didn't appreciate me scratching the shit out of his records. Hey, I was only a kid. But ultimately, jazz is colorblind, and here is a great quote from our guest, George Scott. One thing about music, people don't look at color. Jazz is an activist movement. Whites and blacks in the same room having fun. Yep, that sounds about right. Now, speaking of all things music, next to the Colored Musicians Club is the WUFO, a black-owned radio station. With everything said, it's no wonder the area is a rich source of African American history, locally and nationally. But I got a few more things I want to mention. Mary B. Talbert. A year before the arrival of Reverend Nash at the Michigan Street Baptist Church, Mary B. Talbert had become an influential figure in the church and the nation. Her dedication to fighting against racism and advocating for the rights of African Americans and women earned her the title of the most famous black woman in America, according to one of her colleagues, Mary White Overington. Mary's activism spanned from protesting an exhibit of African Americans at the Pan American Exposition to working with organizations such as the National Association of Colored Women, the Niagara Movement, the NAACP, and the Anti-Lynching Crusaders. It's hard to imagine there was such a thing as the Anti-Lynching Crusaders. Jeez. It's important to note that before marrying William H. Talbert in 1891 and moving to Buffalo after graduating from Oberlin College, she was the assistant principal of Union High School, the first African American woman to hold this position, even though it was still a segregated school district. If you've listened to the Susan B. Anthony episode on Road Trip Ready, a podcast I co-host, you'll see what a significant achievement that truly is, not just for a woman, but for a black woman. She was actively involved in the International Peace Campaign and played a significant role in preserving Frederick Douglass's home in Anacostia. You'll find her buried here in Buffalo in the Forest Lawn Cemetery. All right, let's tie everything together. Further north along Michigan Avenue at the corner of East Ferry Street in Michigan, across from the Bethel AME Church, is the Freedom Wall. Now, a quick note about this church is that it was founded in 1831, which means it predates the founding of the city of Buffalo. In the 19th century, Bethel's pastors and numerous members played an active role in the anti-slavery movement, which was significant. Fugitive slaves en route to Canada often found refuge in the church and in the homes of some of the members. Prominent figures like Frederick Douglass, William Wells Brown, pastors of Bethel Church, and others spoke out against slavery and racial discrimination from the pulpit of the church. If you've seen or read the Rochester video and article on Road Trip Ontario, then you've probably already heard of some of these individuals. So the perfect way to segue from the African American Heritage Corridor to the Buffalo AKG Art Museum, all while staying in the same lane, is through one of the Buffalo AKG public art initiatives.
One of the big things was our public art initiative. I was a part of that committee.
That is Roscoe Henderson, Buffalo AKG Art Museum board member.
A lot of times, it's very difficult to get local artists involved because the gallery usually deals with people with national or international reputations. And so being a part of that allowed us to work closer with the local community and do projects throughout the city, which I know you're familiar with.
Sure.
The first one, or the first big one, was with the Freedom Wall, which showcased different African Americans either that had a Buffalo relationship or, recognized around the world. And that was one of our first projects.
John Baker, Julia Bottoms Douglas, Chuck Tingley, and Edris Rahid collaborated to create the Freedom Wall in 2017. The mural at the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority Cold Spring Bus Maintenance Depot, geez, what a mouthful, was created by the Buffalo AKG Public Art Initiative, as Roscoe mentioned, in partnership with the Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor and local community members. Its purpose is to recognize the United States' historical struggle for political and social equality and honor local leaders' significant and long-lasting contributions to this cause. The Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority provided support to complete the project, which features 28 portraits of notable civil rights leaders from America's past and present on the large concrete wall encompassing the NFTA's Cold Spring Bus Maintenance Depot. And yes, everyone mentioned thus far is on that wall: Reverend Nash, Mary B. Talbert, and of course, Frederick Douglass. You also have local and well-known heroes like Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Angela Davis, and my favorite, Rosa Parks, which often reminds me of Viola Desmond if you're a Canadian like me. I've included a link to all the amazing heroes on the wall, and I encourage you to read their bios and learn about their greatness. As I mentioned in the intro, the Buffalo AKG Art Museum was founded in 1862, and it's one of the oldest public art museums in the United States. So, as you can imagine, things were very different in 1862. Heroes like Ida B. Wells Barnett, an American journalist, suffrage, anti-lynching crusader, and friend of Susan B. Anthony, was born enslaved on July 16th. On September 22nd, Abraham Lincoln issued the Preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation played a pivotal role in ending slavery in the United States. Fast forward to 2017, the AKG is behind initiatives like the Freedom Wall. This is partly due to people like Roscoe moving diversity forward.
A lot of people have not always felt that the gallery was open to them, that it was welcoming to them. And I can say in my tenure, and with the support of our president, Alice Jacobs, our director, Yane Seren, that it's been very important that diversity is part of discussion in whatever we do. When people say, well, do you know of somebody? I say, oh, yes, I do. Why not contact this artist and let's do something?
Sure.
And then it's not just the arts. I do arts with people with disabilities. If there's an organization, veterans, the blind, people with mental health issues, I somehow try to bring them all together. And folks that haven't had past relationships with the institution, I kind of nurture and kind of bring them closer together. That's what I've been doing.
This mindset has led to the AKG featuring exhibits by some incredible artists like Mark Bradford and Chantel Martin.
Now, you know what? Chantel Martin is my girl. I like her. She's from Britain. And we actually keep up with each other. So her work is very interesting. It's not on everybody's, their taste, but I find that, she is a master of like marketing her work. I mean, she has her stuff on a baccarat crystal for a Louis Vuitton brand of brandy or something like that, and she does sunglasses. She does everything. And she's even working on when you when you do the marker on the computer screen, she actually is like work with the companies on figuring out how much pressure do you put on that pen and whatnot to make certain designs. When I talk to people now and I ask them, what is your experience? They'll be like, Roscoe, it was amazing. And then they'll talk about how important diversity and being open to people. I think this is an opportunity. I mean, this space is Common Sky, and this part of the gallery is going to be open to the public forever. So the fact is that we can bring different organization groups and things, and this is going to be like our focal point. Common Sky, we're all in it together. Because when you're an artist, you're not a black artist or a white artist, you're an artist, and that's the way you should look at it.
Truthfully, I couldn't agree more. And I can't wait to get to a point where these things are no longer part of a discussion or a company's promotional material. I want these things to just happen organically, whether it's art, movies, music, or simply applying for a job or promotion. But in terms of Buffalo,
Wherever you travel in the world, one place you should always go to is a museum or a gallery. And the fact is that Buffalo has one of the best contemporary art collections in the world. And what better place to see art than at the AKG and have a nice meal in Buffalo and some wine afterwards.
and it doesn't have to be chicken wings, but I digress. Okay, let's end part 1 here. I hope you enjoyed this Buffalo Black History Month celebration. In part 2, we'll dive into some of Buffalo's incredible architecture. If you're watching on YouTube and like what you're hearing, please subscribe to our channel and share it with a friend. Click the little bell so you don't miss part 2. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player, please subscribe, follow, leave a comment, and a 5-star rating. Until then, thank you so much for listening. Cheers.